death is the one appointment none of us can cancel. It might arrive early, it might come late, but it comes. And yet, if you listen closely to how we live day to day, most of us act as if death is somebody else's problem. Almost like it sits outside our plans, outside our calendars, outside our imagination. In a strange way, that denial can be useful. If we felt death breathing down our neck every hour, would we take risks, fall in love, build anything, start anything? Maybe not. But there's another side to it. If we understand death more clearly, we may end up understanding life more deeply. And that understanding can soften fear. It can help us live with more steadiness, and when the end comes, meet it with less panic. Across civilizations, people have written endlessly about death. Spiritual traditions, in particular, often read like manuals for living in a way that prepares you for dying. Sometimes, though, death has also been used as a tool of control, frighten people with what might happen after, then sell them certainty, salvation, or a better next world. What I want to explore today is a perspective that treats death not only as a philosophical idea, but as something intensely physical. The body shuts down. The brain stops. Something we call the self, which is closely tied to memory, seems to exit the stage. If death is physical, then it should follow physical, physiological, and neurobiological rules. And if those rules can be understood, maybe some of the fear and pain around death can be reduced. Let's start with the fear itself. Every living creature fears death, from the smallest organism to the most complex animal. In fact, fear is one of the signatures of life. It's built into our biology through evolution. If there were no fear, there would be no urgent drive to stay alive, protect the body, find food, avoid danger. Fear is, in a sense, the engine of survival. And death, oddly enough, is part of the same system. It completes a cycle. It clears the way for renewal and evolution. So fear and death are intertwined, fear pushes life forward, and death closes the loop. When we talk about the fear of death in humans, it often comes from three main sources. First, the fear of losing our form, meaning the body and the identity that seems to live inside it. Second, the fear of the unknown, what happens next, what happens to the people we love, what happens to our unfinished plans. And third, the fear of pain, physical pain, emotional pain, and the dread of both. That first one, the loss of form, is especially intimate. Our memories are the most meaningful possessions we have. You can lose money, status, even relationships, but memory is the thread that says, this was me. This was my life. The idea of losing the body also means losing the lifetime of experiences attached to it. And deep down, many of us sense something uncomfortable. This exact combination of body and memories is unique. Even if someone believes in reincarnation, the current version of you, this particular you, doesn't come back as a perfect copy. That finality can sting. It also raises a provocative thought. If future technologies could preserve memory, would the fear of death shrink? If you could keep your autobiographical continuity intact, would death feel less like erasure and more like transition? Even imagining that possibility shows how central memory is to fear. Now the second source, fear of the unknown. We worry about what we can't control. What happens to family? To possessions? To responsibilities? We are attached, and the future is uncertain. But notice something, that uncertainty belongs to the living. The fear is about scenarios we can imagine but can't fully manage. And there's a paradox here. Once you are gone, uncertainty ends for you. No more anxious forecasting. No more mental rehearsal of worst-case outcomes. So one way traditions tried to reduce fear was by training detachment, loosening the grip on outcomes, on possessions, even on identity. Not because people didn't love, but because clinging tightens fear. For some people, the unknown also includes ideas of rebirth. If karma shapes the next life, then the next life could be better, or it could be harder, a poorer circumstance, a different form, a different set of limits. That unpredictability can create a different kind of dread. Interestingly, in reported cases of children who claim memories of past lives, most of them lose those memories by around age 5 or 6. One possible explanation is that as the new personality solidifies, old memory traces fade. And another striking detail, those reports rarely emphasize pain during death. The suffering seems tied to the body and the brain of the current life, not something that cleanly carries forward. A similar pattern shows up in near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences. People often report a sense of observing without pain, even when their physical body was in crisis. Whether you interpret those accounts spiritually, psychologically, or neurologically, they point to an important idea: pain appears closely linked to the body and its working memory systems. The fear of death, too, may be a product of this living body-brain complex. As long as we inhabit a body, the body will defend itself, and that defense includes fear. So let's talk about pain directly. Why does pain exist at all? Pain is a signal. It tells the brain that something is wrong, so corrective action can happen. Without pain, you might burn your hand and never pull away. You might develop an infection and never realize it. Pain is protective, even though it's miserable. Living bodies are also astonishing self-repair systems. Many injuries heal if the body is allowed to rest. Animals often respond to pain by going still, conserving energy, and letting healing do its work. Humans, especially modern humans, tend to demand performance: keep moving, keep working, keep producing. So we lean on medicines, procedures, and surgeries to force the body back online quickly. A lot of pain is connected to inflammation. Inflammation is part of healing, but sometimes it spirals. No one fully understands why in every case, and then you see runaway processes, tumors, cancers, immune disorders. When our tissues inflame and cells die, pain becomes part of the experience, and the brain learns an association: cell death equals pain, and death equals pain. That association fuels fear. It's worth remembering, though, that not all deaths are painful. Sudden events, some heart attacks, fatal accidents, dying in sleep, can involve little or no experienced pain, at least as far as we can tell. So a large chunk of the terror around death is not death itself, but the anticipation of suffering. Emotional pain is a different creature, but it's just as real. It comes from attachment and fear: losing a loved one, losing a role, losing a future you imagined. At death, emotional pain can arise from losing identity and the memories we cling to, while physical pain arises from the body's breakdown. And here's a fascinating overlap: in the brain, emotional pain and physical pain light up many of the same regions. The body doesn't always care whether the hurt came from a broken bone or a broken bond. One way to imagine the dying process is as a struggle between systems. The brain, the body, the cellular machinery, all of them have interests. In a slow death, it may feel like an extended negotiation: signals, stress responses, changes in consciousness. Eventually, the brain's shutdown becomes definitive, and brain death ends the organism as a coordinated whole. In a sudden death, that long negotiation may not happen. The body doesn't get time to argue. And in suicide, the conflict becomes even more stark. The body might be physically workable, but the mind is in severe emotional pain, and the brain chooses an exit. Some traditions speculate about consequences like ghost phenomena from such abrupt endings, but at minimum it highlights that the decision point can be dominated by the brain state, not the body's overall health. If pain fuels fear, then reducing pain could reduce fear dramatically. Ancient yogic traditions, especially those involving Kundalini practices, suggest there are ways to interrupt pain signals traveling to the brain, possibly through mastery of attention and the nervous system. That's not easy and not accessible to most people in a disciplined, safe way. Modern medicine can also block pain signals. Opioids are a powerful example, but they come with major risks: addiction, dependency, overdose, and widespread social harm. So the challenge becomes clear: can humanity develop pain reduction methods that work reliably, don't destroy lives, and don't come with devastating side effects? If we could, it would transform not only medicine but also our relationship with dying. It might be one of the most meaningful inventions imaginable. It's hard not to notice, though, that incentives matter. When profit dominates the deepest, most human research goals can get underfunded or distorted. Pain relief should be a civilizational priority, not just a market product. Many spiritual systems have also focused on pain reduction, especially emotional pain. There's a classic story. Siddhartha sees old age, sickness, and death, and he becomes determined to find a path out of suffering. That quest eventually becomes the middle path of Buddhism. Different traditions use different language, but the target is similar: reduce suffering, reduce fear, and clarity emerges. To understand fear of death even more, it helps to look at memory. A useful way to frame it is that we carry at least two kinds of memory. First, brain memory, our life story, our learned skills, our relationships, stored in neural pathways. Second, body memory, patterns embedded throughout the body, potentially in cells, tissues, and biological systems that have been shaped by a lifetime of stress, injury, posture, nutrition, movement, and environment. Brain memory is a familiar topic. Neuroscience has mapped a lot of it. Body or cellular memory is less fully understood, but it's becoming harder to ignore. The body is not just a vehicle with a brain on top. It's an information system. Consider scale. The human body contains on the order of tens of trillions of cells, while the brain has tens of billions of neurons. The numbers aren't the whole story, but they provoke a question: if cells are living units that respond, adapt, and change gene expression based on experience, might they store traces of experience too? Cells are like tiny factories. They pull in material, convert it to energy, build structures, replicate, and maintain the body. They also carry epigenetic marks, chemical modifications that influence how genes are expressed based on what the organism has been through. That's a kind of memory, not the memory of your favorite song, but the memory of stress, diet, toxins, inflammation, and repeated patterns of living. Some of the strangest hints come from organ transplantation. There are reports, controversial, not settled science, where recipients describe new preferences or personality shifts after receiving an organ. One hypothesis is that some form of cellular memory is embedded in tissue. Even if we stay cautious, it's a reminder that biology may store information in more places than we once assumed. Then there's the airy idea of zombie genes. Research has shown that after an organism dies, not all gene activity stops immediately. Some genes can become more active for a period, including genes related to stress responses, inflammation, immunity, and even cancer pathways. Why would that happen? One way to interpret it is that cells, at least for a while, keep trying. They resist shutdown. They rage, in their biochemical way, against the collapse of the system. If that's true, it fits a broader picture. During dying, the brain may initiate a shutdown sequence: heart, lungs, circulation, but the body's cellular systems may resist, at least briefly. That resistance could be linked to inflammation, and inflammation is linked to pain. So physical pain near death might not just be damage, it might be the friction of a system dissolving while parts of it struggle to persist. For the body to function, cells have to communicate constantly, coordinating growth, repair, differentiation, immune defense, and danger signals. Much of this communication happens chemically through molecules carried in fluids like blood. But chemical signaling is relatively slow. In urgent moments, danger, severe injury, perhaps even dying, the body may need faster coordination. One speculative idea is that cells might also communicate through light, via biophotons, tiny emissions produced during biochemical reactions. Photon-based signaling would be fast. Is it the main channel? That's still a developing area, but it's an intriguing possibility when thinking about whole-body coordination and what happens as the system unravels. This brings us to one of humanity's oldest questions: does anything continue after death? Almost every civilization has had beliefs in afterlife or reincarnation, from burial rituals and mummification to cremation rites that still assume some continuity of the person. If something carries forward, one candidate is memory, maybe not all memory, but a compressed essence of it. Some theories imagine this transfer as a kind of stable information packet, something that could persist long enough to connect to a new life. One speculative mechanism discussed in scientific-sounding spiritual language is the idea of solitons, stable wave-like packets that can travel without dispersing. In this view, intense brain activity at death might transform memory patterns into a transferable form. There is at least one interesting data point from neuroscience. Recordings from dying brains have shown bursts of heightened activity, including in the gamma frequency range, roughly 30 to 100 Hz. Gamma activity is also associated with states of intense focus and deep meditation. So it's possible that the brain, near death, enters a kind of extreme, concentrated state. If that happens, it might explain a common report: people feeling that their life flashed before them, or that deep memories rose to the surface, or that they sensed loved ones nearby. A brain in a heightened state could activate old, powerful neural networks, especially those associated with attachment and safety. Interestingly, similar patterns have been seen in animal studies too, suggesting this might be a general biological phenomenon rather than a uniquely human story. Now, not everyone accepts reincarnation. Some believe death is simply the end, body ends, consciousness ends, story over. But there is also a large collection of reported cases, especially involving children, where detailed past life recall is claimed, sometimes with verifiable details. These reports span societies and religions. You can debate interpretations, but as experiential data, they're part of the discussion. Near-death experiences add another layer. When someone is declared clinically dead or near death and then returns, many of them report profound shifts: less fear of dying, more appreciation for life, a changed moral or emotional orientation. Often they describe reviewing their life in a vivid, panoramic way. Whether that's neurochemistry, psychology, or something more, the practical outcome is notable: fear decreases. So here's a possibility: if we see death as part of a continuum, where some aspect of memory may persist, fear might soften. But uncertainty remains. If rebirth is not under our control, then the unknown returns in a different form. And that uncertainty can still frighten people. The sobering truth is that nobody can offer a fully satisfying, testable answer about what happens to memory after death. Much of what we have are hypotheses, stories, spiritual claims, and scattered data points. And that may be why so many philosophical traditions, especially in Indian thought, repeatedly pivot back to the same advice: since the after is unclear, focus on living well now. Live ethically, live wisely, reduce harm, cultivate clarity. That leads to the practical question: how do we live in a way that makes death feel less like an enemy and more like an event we can meet with dignity? One approach is straightforward: reduce physical suffering through better health, better care, and better pain management systems, ideally ones that don't create new suffering through addiction or side effects. Another is to reduce emotional suffering by living with less greed, less compulsive attachment, and more harmony with the forces around us, other people, nature, the rhythms of the world. Many traditions would call that spirituality, not necessarily ritual, but wisdom applied to daily living. If greed is reduced, resources are used more carefully, and sustainability becomes easier. And sustainability isn't just an environmental issue, it's a mental health issue. A life lived in constant extraction and competition tends to breed anxiety and fear. A life lived with balance tends to breed steadiness. Most deaths arrive through old age, disease, or accident. In yogic philosophy, Patanjali suggests that an advanced practitioner, through deep insight into actions and their consequences, can even sense the timing of death. Whether you take that literally or metaphorically, it points to an idea: our lives are shaped by patterns, and profound self-awareness can reveal those patterns. There's also an intriguing thought about experience itself. Maybe life is, at its core, an experience-gathering process. And maybe death arrives when the system has gathered what it can in that form, or when the desire for new experience weakens. There's even research suggesting a relationship between brain size and longevity across species. Larger brains often correlate with longer lifespans, possibly because they allow an organism to shape its environment and reduce risks. From this perspective, as medicine reduces pain and extends healthy years, People may maintain the desire to live longer, to keep learning, experiencing, and exploring. The wish to continue may be tied not only to fear, but to curiosity and engagement with life. Another thread in this worldview is that our bodies and minds interact with Earth's forces, gravity, and electromagnetic fields. If from childhood we were trained in meditation and deep focus, we might tune our nervous systems toward calmness, resilience, and clarity. That could reduce suffering in life and soften fear at death. It could also shape people into what you might call Earth people, living in a way that fits the planet rather than fighting it. Finally, there's the ancient dream that shows up everywhere, leaving Earth, reaching the stars, escaping the heaviness of this world. Gods descending in shining vehicles, heavens above, other realms, these images may reflect a deep desire to escape pain and limitation, to find a better home. Some even imagine reincarnation beyond Earth, on other worlds. But there's a quieter possibility that might be even more important. What if the real task is to make this world hospitable enough that we don't need to fantasize about escaping it? What if heaven is not a distant location, but a condition we build here, by reducing suffering, curbing greed, and aligning our technology with human well-being? If we can decrease pain, understand the body's role in fear, and live with greater wisdom, then death may still be sad, still mysterious, but less terrifying. And in the process, we might discover something surprising. The best way to prepare for dying is to learn how to live more fully, more gently, and more awake.